Dragon Trainers. I'm feeling those Friday vibes today. You're here with Raising Dragons. I'm Mama Swan. Today's topic might be a little bit controversial, and that's okay. You can totally disagree with me. We are allowed to not think the same way and not agree with everything. It's actually good for us because it challenges us to think. So, what should you do when your dragons start thinking for themselves? Let them. Teach them, even. Let your dragons think for themselves. It's not that you will lose control. I know that's what you're afraid of. You never had control to begin with. So, let your dragons think for themselves. Let and help your dragons problem solve over finding the right versus wrong answer. When it comes to right versus wrong, society changes that on a regular basis, whether that's right or wrong. If you are more focused on what's right versus wrong for your answers or really anything, then you're ignoring your emotions, you're ignoring your body, you're ignoring all these signs that might be coming up that things should change because we need to adapt. Evolution is about adapting, and they can't adapt if they're not able to think for themselves. A lot of people try to make dragons into versions of themselves, and this doesn't work at all because they're dragons. Let your dragon think for themselves. The reason we haven't been doing this already is because it's inconvenient, and or we were never taught to do it ourselves. There will always be somebody who's going to try to tell you what your dragon can and can't do, and that may include they process things. But unless you're actually in their brains, you can't tell anybody how they process things. And we are not that advanced on brain scans to fully understand what's going on here. If you have a dragon with ADHD, which stands for Attentive, Discerning, Hyperfixating Dragon, they might try to say your ADHD dragon can't sit still and will have a hard time concentrating. No, they don't. The problem is you are trying to hold their attention with something boring, and you haven't figured out a way to make it more interesting. Dragons always learn better from play. Time and time again, studies have showed this. And yet we still put them at these desks with these tests, and we even know that the tests don't prove anything about what the dragon actually knows. It's just what the dragon memorized. And memorizing, of course, is a type of thinking, but it's not the same as thinking for yourself. As a society, we are not trying to get your dragon to reach its full potential. That has been left completely up to you and your dragon. What they are trying to teach your dragon is to either behave or be put in a cage. Thinking for yourself means that you can face your mistakes and your failures, and even feel affection for the place that they brought you. And that only happens with time and learning how to love learning itself, which is much harder to do if you feel stupid. And if you aren't thinking for yourself, there's a lot of things that can happen in a day to make you feel stupid. When you learn to love learning and just your own life experience, it can make these moments funny and enjoyable. Feeling stupid doesn't need to always feel the same level of pain as when you stub your toe in the dark or step on a goddamn Lego. Okay, so that's the end of the dragon portion for this week. And now it's Friday, so we are on to what I have been reading. Since we last talked about books, I have finished 2 audiobooks. One was The Vampire Armand by Anne Rice. I've been enjoying her vampire series. I found a lot of depth in some of the later books so far. And learning Armand's backstory was no exception. If you have started the dive into this book series and didn't continue for whatever reason, I would say it's worth continuing on. I think a lot of people drop off on the first 3 books or so, and it just, in my opinion, it just gets better from there. I also finished Accomplice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. This was a trilogy, and I found it very delightful. I think if you enjoy fiction, this is a well thought out fantasy scene with some decent twists and turns. Now, my favorite audiobook that I finished recently is titled One Piece: Blood in the Shallows by Tim Sonsky. Now, most of the audiobooks I listen to are on Libby, but this one was on YouTube. It was a 6-parter, and it was read and is on the page of, I think it's Jonesy Cage. That's spelled JONSEIKAGE. So you can find it there. I'm a big One Piece fan, and if you are too, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. So this is a alternate reality where they go a different direction after Enies Lobby. Now, if you're a big One Piece fan, I know that's like really hard to handle, but just appreciate alternate realities and appreciate the piece separate from what the characters become after that time jump. And the reason I say that is because this is the backstory that Sanji has always deserved. And I think it is well worth your time as a One Piece fan if that is indeed the case. Both the author and the voice actress were like clearly fans, and they both nailed each of the personalities of the One Piece crew. The author is really good at describing scenes as you would totally see them in the anime. If you are a One Piece fan, then you are already ready to have your heart broken, so I don't feel the need to warn you there. Now, for today's book readings, of course, I'm continuing to read A Handbook of Native American Herbs, and today's herb was the blackberry. There is a lot to this little fruit, but the thing that I want to share is that using the leaves bruised and applied outwardly, you can use it on hemorrhoids, and for sore mouth and inflamed throat, you can gargle the tea of the roots and leaves pretty often, and I think that's worth noting. In 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, the chapter I read today was 10 questions to ask yourself when you don't know where your life should go next. And I'm going to read to you question number 8. What are you struggling with the most right now? Interestingly enough, the things that plague you the most deeply are signals towards where you must move next. If your deepest issue is not having a romantic relationship, the next phase of your life will likely need to involve at least trying to develop that. The things that you're struggling with the most right now can tell you what you really want and toward which directions you should step. And lastly, I am still going through the notes of the Canterbury Tales. And one of the notes really stood out to me. There's a proverb referred to that goes like this: beat the dog before the lion. Meaning that if you chastise a smaller creature in sight of a larger, the larger will take warning. One can see the application of this in the political field. Repress a minor rebel, and a great enemy may think twice before attacking. Stood out to me for 2 reasons. One is it helped me understand bullying on a level that I have definitely been missing. It actually makes a lot of things suddenly make sense. And the second reason it stood out to me is because when we were training our little hellhound to not eat the cat food, we would take a stuffed animal and pretend like it was about to eat the food, and then we'd beat the crap out of this helpless stuffed animal. And then he wouldn't want to touch the cat food. Of course, that makes no difference now because we weren't consistent enough about it, and every chance he gets, he will totally go for that cat food. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.